Hello, and welcome to Chaotic Insights, where I break down the TV show Chaotic, and sometimes the TV show isn't the only thing that's chaotic. So, let's grab a snack, start your laundry, and we'll dive right in. Today we'll be talking about episode 20, Maze of Menace. So, episode summary, Maxwell is running with a cloak on. Then cut to Tom is chasing Yakis when he gets a message from Nadrin in a blue bubble void. So, he decides to go to Nadrin and Interest, who tell Tom that Maxor's plan is to go to the Labyrinth of Lysic to get the Callstone where all of Maxor's courage and abilities are transferring to. We learn whoever breaks the stone gains Maxor's abilities, or like in the process of whatever he's lost so far, from the decomposition music. Then, Von Blute was spying on this conversation and learns all the same information that we learn about the Callstone, and thus Von Blute sets off to get the Callstone for himself. Then Kaor finds Krek and scares the same information out of him, so now Kaor is also on the hunt for the stone. Tom gets to the sanctuary first and gets the Callstone before Von Blute and ports to the labyrinth. Then in the labyrinth we get Kaor versus Von Blute. Kaor wins, and we get Maxor versus Kaor. Maxor wins, because Tom let Maxor open the Callstone in order to regain his powers. As a reward for helping, Tom gets a new scan of Maxor with him at full health, full strength, full power. That's what we're working with. So analysis. So this is the conclusion to a three-story arc that we have. So some of these things refer to all of the episodes, and some of them refer to just this episode. One thing that refers to all of the episodes is throughout these three episodes, the purple cloak that Maxor has donned serves as a visual distinction between the Drome and Param, and so it helps us as an audience delineate which Maxor is the scan that Tom has versus the Maxor in Param running away scared. It serves as a visual storytelling device that helps the audience quickly recognize which storyline we're in, right? So if we see a normal Maxor, we're like, oh, that's Maxor in the Drome. And if we see Maxor in his purple cloak, we're like, oh, that's Maxor in Param, who has been affected by the decomposition music. But when we see Maxor regain his powers in this episode, we see Maxor finally able to shed the cloak. And this is a turning point for him. So we kind of see he dons this cloak once he realizes the decomposition music has affected him, and once he starts to lose his courage. So this cloak is kind of the symbol of Maxor's fear and Maxor losing his courage and him like hiding his true self to some extent or losing his true self. You know, it's a visual barrier between the Maxor we know and the Maxor that is. But when he gains all his powers back, he sheds the cloak, and when he does that, his hair pops right up. And so we wonder, is the cloak like, did he slick it back for the cloak just to keep that volume down on the top of his head? Who's to say? But when he sheds the cloak, his hair pops right up, and he regains all his power. And one thing about this cloak that it doesn't bother me, but it's just something I've always thought, is that the clasp on the cloak looks like two little talons holding it together. So like if Maxor was a creature with talons, I would think that he was like holding the cloak and his little talons are peeking out because he has to hold it together. But realistically, it's just a clasp because Maxor has fingers. So I it's just an interesting design note that I always perceive it like every time I see this purple cloak, I perceive it as two little fingers like holding the cloak together, but it's actually a clasp. And I think that's interesting. But it's also a purple cloak, so let's talk about color symbolism. It's a purple cloak. And what does purple represent? Royalty. And what is Maxor? The leader of the overworld. And, you know, purple is the symbol of royalty because the rarity of the natural purple dyes like in history, and so purple was a very rare color for garments to be, and so thus only like the wealthy had it and became a symbol of status and wealth and royalty, right? And so, what is putting Maxor in this purple cloak, what effect does that have on us perceiving him? And also, I think like the value of the purple is it's like a darker purple. It's not like, wow, vibrant radiance purple. It's like, it's not super, like, it's a little muted, it's a little dark, but it's not like, wow, the darkness of night. It's a nice purple. It's a nice purple. And so it helps him maybe blend into his surroundings. Is it a camouflage device? Is it just what he had on hand? These are nice questions. But that's the analysis part of this is him, like the visual distinction aspect of it, of this is a tool that media uses to help you as an audience member understand the different versions of Maxor, and also the symbolic shedding of this weight off his shoulders to him fulfill his whole self once again. Okay, I think we get it. Moving on to Von Blut. Now, not to poke a hole in Von Blut's plans, but when he gets to the Callstones, why not just break open all the Callstones, right? Because what we learn is all of the powers that are being drained from this music get turned into a Callstone. And so we're in a, what is it called, sanctuary that has all of these purple Callstones. Why not break those open and just like get all that power? Now, that leads us to the question is, the one with max horsepower is blue, so is there some distinction between the blue callstones and the purple callstones? And to me, I would think the decomposition music is still working on Maxor. Like he's lost most of his courage, but it's not down to zero yet. It hasn't started to affect his other stats, it doesn't seem like. And so to me, blue is in process and purple is complete. But it must not be that, because otherwise, why not just break open all these callstones once you learn about them and gain a mass power? I think, is it a plot hole? Not necessarily, because maybe the purple, that's not what it means. Maybe the purple are just different things, like it's something different because the callstones are blue. This translates to, with a decoy, we have a purple one, and Maxor doesn't get the decoy. Kaor gets it, and so when Kaor breaks open the decoy, wouldn't he gain a little bit of power as well? Or if there's something different altogether, then he just broke a rock open. Pretty rock. But I do think it's interesting how Tom is the only human in this episode, and we never visit Chaotic in this episode. This episode happens fully in Param, and so we get to see these locations that we haven't seen before, the labyrinth and the sanctuary, for example. And because we haven't seen the sanctuary before, of course, we don't know about these callstones. So they don't provide all of that information of like what's the difference between the purple and the blue, but it's something that, I question about. And furthermore, with Tom being the only character and it all taking place in Param, we finally get to complete this arc for Tom. Not only does he prove himself to the overworld creatures, therefore raising himself to the status of friend, but he also regains his Maxwell card, which has been 10 episodes in the making, right? And so, because this is like a 3 episode arc, we are in Chaotic for the first 2 episodes. So, like, we don't need to be at Chaotic in this one necessarily, but it's interesting as an episode itself, we don't visit Chaotic. Interesting. And yes, he does finally prove himself, and we see this inkling of he's starting to gain the trust of Interest and Nadrin and Maxor, and like kind of be included in this inner circle. And this is a very vital moment where he's done all this work to help Maxor, and so thus that trust is being gained. That's all I have for analysis. On to lore. We get confirmation that there is another route from the underworld to the overworld through the labyrinth of Lysic, right? The passage, it's not the only place. And I've been asking that question for a couple episodes now. Like, how are all of these people just showing up in the overworld? It's because there's multiple paths, right? And I've been talking about that, but this gives us confirmation that there is a second path. or a third, right? We count the one through Lake Kenepo, and then we have the passage, and now we have the labyrinth, right? Which it seems like the labyrinth is tricky to navigate, but Von Blute knows it like the back of his hand, we're told. So this is just confirmation of there's more than one way. And I feel so relieved that I can stop asking that question. Now, another thing we get confirmation on is that let's talk about scanners. Everything comes back to scanners. We get confirmation that you can port with param objects. So Tom doesn't port to Chaotic back to a location with a param object, but he ports from param to param. He ports from the sanctuary to the labyrinth with the callstone. And the callstone, param object, and so we get confirmation that this is something that can happen. So yay, confirmation. Yay, confirmation. We get confirmation. It's just interesting. I think the confirmation that this is something that does exist in this world, it has interesting implications of like, if you can port with a callstone, there's so much more that you can port with. So it's just interesting. Now on to my last little piece of lore we have is part of the freaky wizard magic that we got from the last episode. So last episode we learned about Nadrin's freaky wizard magic, but this one we get the blue like message sending code portal, if you will, void device where he sends the message to Tom. And then we also get Natron has TV projection abilities. So that's so nice of him to be able to visually story tell for us. And not just for us, for the characters in Param. And like, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to be a TV projector, and that character's Nadrin. So to that I say, okay, and to that I say, okay, visual narrative storytelling devices, yay! But on to fun facts and other notes. I have two things. One, the irony of Von Blute with a Torwig, because it's a jetpack, and he's a character with wings, and so, like, he can fly, right? But he's not just gonna fly, he's gonna use his convenient Torwig jetpack because it goes faster. And I think that's so interesting of like, it's like, humans can walk, but we can also put on roller skates and go faster, you know? Or, no, that's a great example. That's the best example I came up with in this moment. But like, he's has wings and he's capable of just going, but he uses the Torwig. And I just think that's so funny. Not necessarily funny, haha, but like funny, like, oh, that's funny. You get it. And the other thing is we get an interesting angle of Tom in the show. So we get a high angle downward, looking downward on Tom's head in the scene where Von Blute is spying through his spying shard rock thing that was established earlier on in the Underworld episode where we learned about Von Blute. But we get like a down, like it's a downward angle, it's a high angle on Tom, and we get like the back of his head, but not like straight on. It's just an unusual angle that we don't usually see. And so I thought I would point it out, keep an eye out, like go animation. And so my final thoughts are I don't have a whole lot to say about this episode, kind of clearly, obviously, but this is my favorite episode out of this three-part series. I think the action is great. I think Maxor versus Kaor, Kaor versus Blute. We get the action between Blute and Tom. That's three action scenes. This episode is mostly action, and a lot of that action is good. And these battles are really powered up, and they really go to show why Maxor and Kaor are the fiercest creatures in Param, because they're using powerful attacks that we don't see in the drones. For example, Kaor uses like a noodle arm attack where he's like Mr. Fantastic and his arms stretch out and he like wraps up Von Blute. Like what? Why don't we see that in the drone? Why is Kaz not using that on the regular? But because, Maxor and Kaor know themselves better than Tom and Kaz know them, I think it adds this layer of complexity and it just goes to show why they are the fiercest creatures in Param. They're strong, they have good action, this is a powerful battle and it's interesting, you know? It keeps your attention. And I think you can really feel the stakes in this episode. And we also get a lot less of Maxor just running around scared, which is why I don't like that middle episode of Fearsome Fate, is because Maxor is just running around scared and doing nothing. Whereas in this episode, everybody's doing something, right? Nadrin and Interest are looking for Maxor so that he like doesn't get killed, and Tom is getting the Call Stone to protect Maxor and prove himself. And Von Blute has the motive of this, and Kaor has the motive of that, right? Everybody wants the same thing, and so you really feel that competition and power. But the stakes are like, if Maxor doesn't get his powers back, then there's this ultimate like power imbalance in Param, and it has these like greater effects on the geopolitical landscape of this TV show. So this is my favorite of the three for those reasons of I think it's good storytelling through action and you feel the stakes, but even though this is my favorite of the three episodes, it's still like pretty low on my ranking of chaotic episodes. Just this three episode narrative arc, it's just not my favorite thing. I think I understand how this is a really important thing for chaotic itself, and like the existence of it helps me be a chaotic fan because I like overarching stories and I like having consequences throughout multiple episodes, and I like that it's drawn out, and I like that it rewards the viewer for watching, but I just don't think it's the strongest narrative story, you know, in like over this 3 episode arc. I think over the 10 episodes, beautiful, wonderful, like that's why I'm a chaotic fan. But it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't do for me what I want it to do for me. But I think the action being so good helps it rise above like the Fearsome Fate episode. It has action, but it's fine. And the first episode of these three, the only action is when they go into the Betadrome and learn information, right? So there's not a lot of action there, but this action is good. And something about this episode, I always forget Krek is in it. Like, why is he in this episode? Just to tell Kaor what the plan was. But even when I was doing my notes, I like wrote down Krek in my notes, and then I was like, when was Krek there? Like, I had to rewatch the sequence and be like, oh yeah, he's there. So I think that's funny. We learn that he has dreams and hopes to be in the Air Force. So good for him. Flesh out that character. And, I think that's really all that there is on this. I think these are good episodes. They're just not my favorite. And from the wonky, like, seeing creatures through Maxwell's fear lens to, like, this definitely could have been a two-parter instead of a three-parter. Except there is just so much, like, plot to get through. I think that's all I want to say about that. Maybe I do like how this episode we see interest in Nadrin and their relationship with Maxor and how they're willing to do whatever it takes in order to support him and like get him back. I think that's important and interesting. And seeing Tom's dedication to helping a person he doesn't really know, like that's noble. But like I said, I think the narrative structure and payoff, for me, not my favorite. But it's still chaotic, so I love it. But what do you think about these episodes? I think it's interesting that it's not a part one, two, three. They all have different episode names, episode titles. I think it's interesting that they're spaced out the way that they are. But, like, what do you think? Why do you think the writers did this? Why do you think they gave them different titles? Why do you think they spaced them out? Why do you think they wrap up this 10 episode arc the way that they do? And with that, let me know. I hope you have a great day, a wonderful time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.